during the meeting, our son had run away from the hospital. We didn't know where he was. So, I wanted to know why he had this problem. So that's the problem. So, the Coastal Harbor Lab has had a long and not always distinguished connection to mental illness, and it was because we were the first institution in the United States where Mendel's laws were applied after being rediscovered. So the Carnegie Institution of Washington in 1904 established what they called a Station for Experimental Evolution, but which became called 20 years later the Department of Genetics. And his first director was a very charismatic American biologist named Charles Davenport. And he was very interested in human genetics. In fact, that's really what intrigued him. And a few years after the genetics effort was established, he persuaded the widow of the railroad magnate, Harriman, to establish a eugenics record station in which they would establish, send people out and collect pedigrees of human diseases which ran in families. And that was started in 1910 and effectively stopped by 1930. Though formally it went on until World War II. And so the hope was that you would find some pattern which you might say it was a dominant gene or sex-linked, but no convincing pedigrees were really ever. Certainly not for medical mistake. Yeah, let me just say. So the pedigrees, and I mean, we still, the phenotypes are variable from one generation to another. It's not exactly the same diseases. They're just, is there a single gene behind it? And then they got involved in the nature and nurture demand, and came out very strongly that the message they said was that genetics was the primary determinant of what you were, not your environment. In that sense, there were some people have a chance of a bright future and other people do not. And that's still a very debatable question. Political correctness is sort of, says you shouldn't talk about it, but people are bound to ask, you know, if you have a crazy son, is it because of what the family is like? Is it gene, nature, nurture? So it's impossible to not wonder. And the day-by-day operation came under a man named Harry Long, who would come as a chicken breeder from Missouri. And he was very strongly racist. You know, the only really bright people came from English descent. And testified in a famous immigration hearing in 1924 against admitting that dumb people of Eastern Europe couldn't speak English. So the arguments were not well focused. But they were seized on when the Nazis came to power for their justification of their racial policies. And Lawler saw nothing wrong in 1936 of going into the German consul in New York City and receiving his honorary degree from the University of Harvard. So the trustees of the Carnegie Institution of Washington were just the opposite. There was some of that, and were embarrassed, and it was shut down. It was, it never came out of maybe the public statement, but, and the genetics community as a whole was totally opposed to being able to, saying that we really can't settle the nature and nurture things. All the records of the eugenic record station were shipped away to the University of Minnesota, which focused on twin studies. With the thought that if you took identical twins and looked at those who were raised apart, you might be able to disentangle the nature versus nurture. And there the answer has been not what the public hoped for. There seems to be a little nurture, but not as much as you expect. That is, whether you become schizophrenic doesn't depend very much on where you are. Now this doesn't say it has a birth order and antenatal and, why are identical twins. Sometimes, but generally with time, as they all get older, certainly in cognitive powers, they grow more. But there's something funny in autism. It's claimed that identical twins here maybe 80% concordance, but in schizophrenia, 50%. And even in autism, you can have one twin pair, someone with really bad autism, another one's slight. So there's something that we have to find out. Yeah. And it's just these variable phenotypes. And you might think in autism there'd be some genes which would cause, bad autism, others not so serious. But identical twins can be. So, and then there's a phenomenon that most people have ignored, called allele selection, by which in the autosomes only one of the two genes is expressed. And this is just beginning to be looked at, but it means that for some genes you're effectively haploid. Now I like that idea because I think it will speed up evolution. Because if you ask, well, there haven't been that many generations, which make, you have possible to distinguish an Irish from an English one. Not always, but sometimes, they are Irish. So over a period of, just 1,000 or 2 years, differences can arise. And so if we were haploid, you could see selection of alleles occurring faster than if you had to get 2 copies. So I don't know. Of course, when Harvard we're trying to finally begin to see if it's true. There's a very intelligent English woman, Edith Hurd, who works in Paris. She's studying it. So I think we'll get some real answers over the next 5 years. But if it's real, then it complicates all this. Because the trait can seemingly disappear and reappear the next generation. Which is what you notice when you have pedigrees and you wonder what the hell it is. Yeah, this is a paper from MGH. And there was work out of the Singer Center which came to the same conclusion. So it's just possible this will become really important. Okay, well, there are sort of three threads of research across Ricola. One is by Mike Wigler. Mike is exceptionally intelligent. So intelligent his peers don't recognize him because he doesn't go to meetings. He started out his life as a mathematician, went to Princeton and discovered he was not going to be the world's greatest mathematician. So he had a sort of nervous collapse, and then he recovered and decided to be an MD. So he went to Rutgers Medical School for 2 years, who told him he should never see a patient. He was not a doctor. So he went and got his PhD at Columbia with Richard Axel. And where he acquired the reputation as being Columbia's second project student. Joshua Letterberg was private, Mike was in the second. So, see, Mike is unusual. He was one of the isolators of the RAS gene for cancer, and he loves techniques. And so before the Human Genome Project, he was really trying to get maps. And started focusing on copy number variation. He could measure the number of copies. And then went on from that to show that some autism seems to be caused by copy number variation. You know, you can either go up or down. You can go from 2 down to 1, or you can go from 2 to 3. And with relatively small numbers, I think as we showed him, at that point he came to the attention of Jim Simon. Now, Jim Simon is very important to our institution because he's the world's most successful mathematician. He was chairman of the department at Sunnybrook and gave it up to do a quantitative hedge fund. So last year was an average year for him. He made $1.2 billion. And he's found a Simon Foundation, which is growing, and I hope will get larger. And he's given the money and he has 6 children, of which the youngest daughter was autistic. So it was in his own case, self-interest of why his daughter. So he's been the financial supporter of Mike Wheeler, who has difficulty getting grants. Because he doesn't propose what can be done, but he proposes something new. So, but right now, Mike is going around smiling. I don't know why. His mood goes up and down. And you can see he began the science collection started in 2010, and he's now on the DNA sequencing. So this was the first paper. And the first interesting thing, which is not explainable, is that autism is much more common in boys than girls. With the sort of Asperger's type, about 10 times more common in boys than girls. And the copy number variations which give rise to girls being autistic are loans are, suggesting maybe for girls you need several genes. But that's still, it has not been solved. So that creates a sort of awful whammy that a woman doesn't come down and get a spontaneous mutation, but she's a carrier, and then half her sons are autistic.